You start in the cage. There's a small-time show this weekend. I'll get you in.
Wait a second. Not a fight right away. Shouldn't we train first?
No.
42-year-old biology teacher Scott Voss overslept and is now rushing to work on his motorcycle, breaking a bunch of rules. He didn't make it in time and snuck into the classroom through the window in front of the students. However, the principal was already waiting for him. Thinking on his feet, Scott turned his failed attempt into an improvised lesson, claiming he was demonstrating how an antelope fawn is born.
And that is how a baby antelope comes into the world.
The principal didn't accept his excuses and informed him that he wouldn't get his day off for yet another tardiness. Scott has little interest in his subject, preferring to read sports news. When a student asked a question about the lesson, he brushed it off, saying that in real life, knowledge from this class wouldn't be useful to anyone. During break, he kicked the vending machine to get his chips. Much more passionate about his work is music teacher Martin Streb. Hearing music from the rehearsal hall, Scott went inside and saw Marty enthusiastically conducting his students. Scott was also assigned bus duty today. He asked Marty to cover for him, and the good-natured old man agreed.
Okay, hold that thought. I'm expecting this.
Marty's 48-year-old wife texted him that she was pregnant. This came as a big surprise to the old man, and he asked Scott not to spread the word for now. Scott unsuccessfully flirts with nurse Bella Flores, who repeatedly turns him down. He tried to ask her out on a date, but she refused for the second time. At the teachers' meeting, the principal announces he's forced to make budget cuts. Due to budget deficit, all extracurricular activities are being canceled, including the music program. This means Marty Streb will be out of a job. The old man is outraged. The football team gets new uniforms every year, while his 60 students play on battered instruments. Scott also stands up for the old man and accidentally lets slip that Marty's wife is pregnant, even though he asked him to keep quiet about it. The principal explained that to save the music program, they need to find $48,000. Scott declared that he and Marty would raise that amount, and the principal reluctantly agreed. Then they need to pool money as a staff, the biologist suggested, but realized it was an impossible sum for poor teachers. No one even showed up to the meeting on this issue except Scott and Bella. He didn't miss the opportunity and invited Bella to his home to think over a plan. After being refused, Scott suggests they still go on a date if he can dunk the ball. He tried to cheat, but just fell on his belly anyway. Scott went to his brother Eric, hoping to get a side job from him, but Eric is going through a crisis. Eric has many children, housing in poor condition. He even fired 2 workers because he couldn't pay the bills. Eric advised Scott to return to teaching citizenship courses. In the evening, Scott went to his side job. He helps immigrants prepare for the citizenship exam. It's hard for him to find common ground with foreigners, and the pay is mediocre. He received a check for $132. Then one of the students, a Dutchman named Nico, ran up to Scott. He's very worried about the upcoming exam and asks to study with him separately. Scott went to Nico's home. It turned out that Nico participated in no-holds-barred fights and now works as a mixed martial arts trainer. The Dutchman is in no hurry to start studying. First, they'll watch a fight. Scott wrestled in his college years. Then the teacher learns that the losing fighter will get a whole $10,000.
10 grand? He made 10 grand for that fight?
Yeah.
The next morning, Scott enthusiastically told Marty that he's going to start training in martial arts. That way, they'll raise the needed amount faster. His colleague objected, called the idea dangerous, but after much persuasion, the musician finally agreed. Scott tells the students they'll have a new teacher. Nico is upset. Scott ditched him, but the man explains he's planning to participate in fights and asks the Dutchman to train him. But you're old, Nico objects, and inexperienced. However, he still agrees, reminding Scott that he's helping him prepare for the citizenship exam.
You start in the cage. There's a small-time show this weekend. I'll get you in.
Wait a second. Not a fight right away. Shouldn't we train first?
No.
At home in the basement, Scott hits Marty wrapped in a mattress. The teacher understands that he won't learn anything in 2 days. The old man suggests putting psychological pressure on the opponent even before the fight starts. The teachers arrived at some dump where chickens run around, and fighters prepare for battle among the garbage. To intimidate, Scott put on a helmet with horns and shoulder pads with spikes. His opponent just shook his head. The fight started, and lasted only 2 seconds. The fighter knocked out Scott with a knee strike, and he was carried away on a stretcher. The man told Flores about his plan. She's skeptical, and firmly stated that the idea is insane, and he should stop before it gets worse. Scott objected. He made a promise to Marty, and intends to do everything possible. In the evening, Scott stopped by Marty's to say that nothing would work out. He was met at the teacher's home by his wife, Molly. It turns out Marty buys broken instruments cheap on the internet and fixes them for kids. And the woman doesn't know that her husband will soon be out of work. She mentioned she was expecting a baby and asked to keep it secret. Realizing how devoted and kind Marty is, Scott understood he shouldn't give up.
We're saving Marty's job. That's $750.
He made the first payment of $900 and then came to work with Nico. He teaches disco street fight, which isn't MMA at all, but he knows his stuff about martial arts and has something to teach the fat guy. For example, how to get out of chokes and submission holds. After training with Scott, Nico returned to his workouts. Another fight, although Scott is still suffering from migraines after the previous one. In the first round, he took a beating. Even his balls suffered. Goof Marty didn't bring his buddy a stool, so he lay right on the mat. He doesn't want to get up at all. He's tired. Scott continues to catch punches with his face and somehow survived to the end of the second round. Marty himself became a stool for him. During the final round, heavy rain started. Fighters slip and roll inside the cage. The fight continued, and the slippery ring unexpectedly played into Scott's hands. The opponent kept losing balance while trying to attack. In class, Scott noticed that Malia was upset. Her father demands that the girl quit music and start working in his restaurant. He even considers school a waste of time. Scott recently said the same thing himself. When he tried to object, the student reminded him. Once, he said the same thing in class. Next time, Marty brought a stool but forgot the porridge in the classroom, and Scott needs to eat well before a fight. He had to force down applesauce that was lying around. Scott is waiting for his turn, and then his opponent came out to his aggressive song. The old man went to negotiate about different music and chose some crap from 1969 that sounds like a prayer. The third fight goes the same way. Scott won't raise his hands, so most punches go to his face. Nico gives his student advice, but it's all useless. For now, Scott was saved by the end of the round. Hit and defend, the Dutchman constantly repeats. Scott's opponent completely relaxed, and then the man swung with all his might and knocked out the fighter. And then also threw up on him with the spoiled applesauce.
Who leaves applesauce on the rear dash out in the hot sun?
These shots made it to the internet. School children now laugh at the teacher. Malia stood up for him and called him her hero. Scott's mood instantly improved. So far, Scott has managed to earn $3,000. Each time, Bella patches him up and makes her contribution of $70 from selling cupcakes. They reflect that somehow over time they've become jaded and lost interest in their work. Scott asks the trainer to teach him to attack, not just defend. The winner gets paid more, and if he wins more often, he can fight less. To work on striking technique, they'll turn to another specialist, Mark, and he put 2 guys against our hero at once.
Whoa, this is gonna be funny.
They turned Scott into a cutlet. Finally, the execution was over. Scott passed the test, and Mark takes on his training. After training, everyone gathered at a common table. The master gave a speech that Scott deserves respect for his great willpower. The man is happy with these words, except he can't move his arms.
Can't lift my arms.
Dislocated shoulder, Bella diagnosed, and independently, albeit with difficulty, put it back in place. The principal called Scott to his office. The teacher is criticized for participating in fights. Allegedly, he's disgracing the school. And Malia's father claims that Scott is turning his daughter against him. Scott calmly responded that the parent has the right to be angry, but shouldn't take it out on the child. The teacher emphasized that the educational institution does nothing for students, while he himself undertook to save the music program when everyone else refused. For the first time in a long while, Scott has enthusiasm to teach the kids something. To interest them, he's even ready to dance on the table. No matter how much Nico studies, he can't remember anything. Malia advises him to memorize correct answers using the lyrics of his favorite songs. Scott manages to win sometimes and brings the assistant principal Elkins new checks and a bunch of cash. And the biologist engaged the kids in classes. His successes didn't go unnoticed by Bella, and she finally agreed to come to his place for dinner. Eric cooks for his brother and complains that he's unhappy. He inherited the business from his father, but it brings him no pleasure. Scott advises him to find his calling. Bella arrived, and she can't believe her colleague cooked so deliciously. The woman asks to give her regards to the chef. After dinner, the lady laughed at the fat guy because he always gives up when caught in a submission hold and showed him how to act properly, breaking a lamp. The next day, Scott came to his brother and asked him to go somewhere with him. He helped Eric get a job as a chef at a Filipino restaurant. One day, Mark approached Scott and said UFC wants to see him. He could get those same 10 grand for losing, but Nico refused, saying it's too risky. Scott isn't ready yet. They'll just destroy him there. But they only had $6,000 left to collect, and Nico agreed to arrange everything. They met with the organizer at a cafe. He was very grateful to Scott for helping with Eric's job. He said one registered fighter dropped out, and he knows Scott's story with the music class, and therefore decided to give him a chance. All four head to Las Vegas. Bella is worried. Scott's opponent is very dangerous, but she's not ready to kiss the teacher yet. At the hotel, everyone pounced on the cheesecake, but Scott can't. He's been on a healthy diet for 6 weeks. Suddenly, Bella called and reported that Assistant Principal Elkins was arrested. He had been stealing from the school budget for years, including stealing the money Scott collected for the music program. It's all over. But even now, the teacher doesn't intend to stop and refuse the fight. His opponent, Ken the Crusher, is known for his cunning and unpredictability. Scott warmed up before the fight. On the way to the ring, Scott saw the school orchestra performing his song. The organizer personally arranged this surprise for him. Bella also flew in. Eric will watch the fight with his wife over dinner by candlelight. They reconciled. Beast Ken entered the cage. He intends to deal with the upstart in the first round. Scott doesn't look his opponent in the eyes. All his thoughts are only about the music class. He asks his people how much he'll get for winning. Exactly 50 grand, Mark answers, and the biology teacher is going to earn it. The round started, and Scott immediately took a devastating Superman punch. Dietrich exhausted the fat guy and threw him on the mat. Scott managed to get to his feet, but that didn't make it any easier. Another moment, and the bald guy is pounding him in the ground with elbows again. Scott barely survived the first round. He needs to change something, and he started fighting back. When Dietrich flew at him with a knee, the teacher grabbed him and threw him off. But then the Crusher's next strike hit right on target. Scott took it in the gut, and after the round ended, can't come to his senses. The fat guy can't even find his stool and wanders around the cage. Marty tells his colleague that he's already done so much, inspired all the kids who are watching him now. He's already a hero and can refuse to continue. Marty pointed to the children in the hall and reminded him how much Scott inspired them. The teacher pulled himself together and started bombarding his opponent. The fighters clinched, and then Scott landed a kick on Dietrich and threw him on the mats. The biology teacher is overwhelming the professional fighter. But then he got caught in a tricky triangle. The fight was practically lost, but then Scott lifted the big guy and threw him to the floor. Dietrich is knocked out, and the biologist won $50,000. Bella was finally ready to kiss the fat guy. The music class was saved. The principal thanks Scott, but he'll still have to work during vacation. And Nico successfully passed the exam